Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. As soon as Eliana comes back, we'll have roll call. Welcome, Santos. Oh, all right. Well, Eliana went that way, so, present, we have Randy Kaiser, Lori Willis. We have, Kurt, Director of Public Works as staff member, and we have Santo Martinez online. So could I get a motion to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
All right, and we have a second. All in favor of approving today's agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Before you, you have minutes of the June 12th, 2025 and June 27, 2025 meetings. Any questions or comments on those minutes? If not, could I get a motion to approve those minutes?
I move that we approve minutes of June 12th, 2025 and June 27th of 2025.
Thank you.
I second.
All right. All in favor of approving June 12, 25 and June 27, 25 minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Under old business, I imagine I'm safe in saying that we don't have anyone that want to be chairperson.
No,
Okay,
I just took on the role of the chairperson of the architectural committee.
oh, you did?
Oh, yes.
Okay, all right, well then, that'll keep you off the street.
Yeah.
Or on the street. Okay, our old business today is to continue review and update of chapter 7 of the village code, public ways and property. Director Epler, if you please.
Okay, just to give you an update where we're at on this, obviously, 2 meetings ago, we started discussion about items that I had identified as parts that I felt needed review or even realignment or changes. And I gotta say, as we got deeper into this, I see that one of the biggest issues is lack of detail, and even to the point of perception that maybe some of these things were kind of rushed through. Didn't really want to do the same thing. And I kind of reached a point where felt that it needed some help with it. And with that, Manager Weir suggested that we contract the services of Santos Martinez to help us not only with Title VII, but also Title IX, which also applies to roads and infrastructure. So with that, Santos, are you able to?
Good afternoon. Yeah, and we had a meeting with Kurt, the village manager, police chief, and planning and zoning director, that there's, as Kurt just mentioned, there's some overlap between Title VII and Title IX when it comes to the language, not just of permits, but when permits required, when an issuance of substantial completion is indicated, so a bond can come back. And so what we'd like to do is look at these together. We've been working on some amendments to Title IX and the zoning provisions with the village. We haven't looked at this correlation between these two titles, and I think we're at a point where we really need to. That if we're looking at amendments to Title VII, making sure that they match the other provisions in the code where things need to line up correctly. And so if we're already starting it on Title IX, how do we integrate Title VII into it in that same conversation? And so um, we had, I think, a really good meeting 2 weeks ago to talk about the permitting process, the issue, the issue of a bond of to verify that the work can be done completely correctly, and that's the first part. I know that you've had some other conversations on Title VII about homeowners being able to demonstrate bond, not just contractors, and I've got those elements in from Chuck. He gave me a copy of his notes, and I've got those here before me. But I just think that this is just making sure all provisions of the code line up the right way, and we don't have a glitch where they need to be integrated. And I think it's manageable. I do want to point out that there's been a lot of conversations recently since we had an update with the council last week about culverts and steep slope properties. And how do we manage that and its impact, not just directly to that property, but downstream? And I've been trying to reach out because it was suggested at council, what do other high mountain municipalities have in their code with respect to culverts? And I've reached out to a couple here in New Mexico. Um, I'm trying to get responses back, and maybe there's something else that we can integrate into our code with respect to this issue on culverts to just make sure that it's done the right way and it's not creating more harm than good after it's installed. Or we tell somebody to install the wrong one, the wrong size. I think the mayor even said, he's got a 6-inch bar ditch and was instructed to put in an 18-inch culvert. So, why are we doing that? So these are parts that I'm willing to help to just make sure everything lines up the right way and that we don't have a snag once we come time to inspections and permits.
Well, and I think, and that's a good example, and we've discussed the box culverts and different situations with there. And as with anything, I looked into it, it's to try to make it just cut and dry and say, okay, we're gonna require box culverts on all uphill driveways. But then if you really think about it, even a regular culvert, a corrugated metal pipe, that is an engineered component. It's pre-engineered to certain standards, certain specifications for installment. So to just say, and we've discussed this a little bit before, who is to say how that box culvert is designed? How is the criteria established for what's acceptable as a box culvert? Some of the box culverts I see out there, they're beautifully built and there's a lot of craftsmanship. Where's the engineering to back them up? Okay. And it's just an example of going into these things. There are definitely some changes that are easy changes at first glance, but we want to make sure that it covers everything because a lot of these I think were put in place with good intentions, but didn't think about all the possible scenarios, different scenarios that we have to deal with. And, to make a ordinance that's going to work everywhere is impossible. But if we try to make it too general, it's really ineffective in some areas. There are things within Title VII that, especially in regards to any kind of numbers or fees, that is probably better to have in resolution as opposed to in ordinance. Long story short, we've got a lot of things to work on here, but some of the most simple changes, when we really get deep into it, end up being much more complicated to get it right to where we want it to be. I know this, we essentially don't have a whole lot of movement. We started a few weeks ago with the intention we were gonna make all these changes and get them ready to present to council but I don't wanna do it just for the sake of getting it done. I want it to be something that works now and is gonna continue to work. And to be fair with our constituents and our contractors, homeowners, everybody. A lot of the issue that we have is not just in our policies, but our procedures and how we're enforcing them. One good example I can use is an encroachment permit, just like a building permit, is good for 1 year. Okay, but we don't have a process for renewal in place. We've got work to do on our end. Most contractors, I didn't know an encroachment permit needed to be redone every year. We've got a lot of stuff to do on our end and just the processes.
Wait, Kurt, are you saying that that's only during this construction phase, that it's only on a yearly basis?
Yes.
Okay,
Basically from your first inspection to your final inspection, and then you get your deposit back. That permit is good for a year. The other thing, something as simple as that we identified in our process, in our encroachment permit. There's 3 inspections listed: inspection 1, inspection 2, inspection 3. Okay. Inspection 1, for understanding, is when I would go meet with the homeowner or the contractor and we would identify where the culvert's gonna go. And that's where we would talk about sizing, placement, so forth and so on. This would be the point, if we had box culverts as a requirement, that we would discuss location of the box culvert. The second inspection is when the culvert or box or whatever that's going in is in place. Okay, the final inspection is the final. When that passes, then you get your deposit back. Now, what's stated in ordinance is that when the deposit or bond or irrevocable letter of credit, whatever we take for the deposit for this work, it's stated that once substantial completion is completed, then the village is to hold on to that deposit for 6 months. But the thing is, in our permitting process, we don't have it clearly established at what point is considered substantial completion. In my eyes, that's the second inspection. Substantial completion is when the culvert is in, the road profile is built to subgrade, just short of what the final topping is going to be. Okay, I would call that substantial completion. And then final completion would be when it was completely finished and done. Here again, that's what I would consider substantial completion, but that's not what our processes and our paperwork says. Okay. But that's also, forces us to consider if, and I have experienced this myself, and since I've been in this position, if this encroachment has got just to replace the culvert. Okay. To hold that money for 6 months. If that project can literally be done in less than a week, and it's done and it's great, it's hard to have to tell people, sorry, according to ordinance, I've got to hold this for 6 months. On a new construction, it's not even noticed, because usually when that second inspection is done, it's pretty rare that house is complete and ready for final inspection in 6 months. But just recently, had the experience of contractor got his encroachment permit, had the culvert work done the next day. Okay, did the first inspection, went in the morning when he had the culvert in, and went the end of the day and it was completed. That's pretty tough to say, okay, now we're gonna hold your money for 6 months. You see, I'm just using examples of how, we have to see if there's opportunity to separate tasks. Do we separate out from new construction to replacement and have a different type of process? One thing the biggest thing that led to this conversation and getting into trying to deal with these different scenarios was there was a lot of feedback, particularly from contractors within our, because of our process. Where they come in and get a building permit. And then they're sent over to Public Works to get an encroachment permit. You know, they'd really like to have a one-stop shop, okay? And that's simple, let's just do it all right here, okay? And but then looking into it, we had problems in our processes that led people to get the building permit and not even realize they needed to get an encroachment permit. They were from out of town, so forth and so on. The worst part of it is those that even knew better, knew that they could get a building permit and not get an encroachment permit, and maybe we'd find out, maybe we wouldn't, okay? We're getting that process resolved and pretty immediately, and everybody's getting encroachment permits now. But that feedback from contractors mainly, that they just kind of want to have a one-stop shop, really made sense. And so we're working to that, but it just also made us realize not just Title VII, but Title IX's got some work that needs as well.
Are you suggesting then that all go through Reggie and planning and zoning? For the encroachment permits and everything?
As far as ensuring that the encroachment permit is done, I will still insist on being the one that does the inspections. And working with the contractors and homeowners to do what's right for the roads. But it literally just the physical act of having to go two places to, you when you get your building permit, your water meter's taken care of, if there's sewer service, that's taken care of, all components. But what it put us in the type of situation it put us in was that people could get a building permit, get their water meter put in, sewer tap, everything, and never have an encroachment permit. And it's been as simple as the list of encroachment permits we have, we're sending to Reggie and he's comparing them to building permits and to see who does and doesn't have encroachment permits. And once we did that, a lot of people came in and got them done. Some folks didn't even realize they needed to.
Do you happen, and I'm sure you probably don't, but I'm curious, and maybe Santos could have some insight into this. The holding the money for that encroachment permit for 6 months. Is there a history behind doing that, for a reason for doing that? Is where they came up with a 6-month time frame?
The reason for doing that is as it was explained to me 20-something years ago when they first started charging that deposit for encroachment permits, was that would allow a period of time to see if the component put in would work. If the driveway 6 months later wasn't draining well, it applies to road crossings, where if within 6 months, if that trench settles, and that's how it was explained to me, that timeline was established to see if the work that was done will last.
Okay, that makes perfect sense to do that, but you're also suggesting now that the contractors are complaining about holding their money. So what do you
let me back up. I really haven't got a complaint from a contractor about holding their money.
And what are we talking, and sorry for interrupting, but what are we talking about for the deposit for that encroachment permit that the village is holding? What's that amount?
It's $3,000 now.
Okay,
It was just changed at the beginning of this fiscal year from $1,500. That rate was established, I believe, in 2002.
okay.
Santos would like to.
I just want to point out, I think the issue with the bond is what Kurt mentioned, is that there's not a difference between if you're just replacing a culvert or installing a new one. And that I think that the incident that Kurt mentioned is a viable one to be considered of. If the work is and I think we could do this in Title VII. I think we could create a standard to where there's a definition or a listing of for new construction, and then another one for like repair, replace type of work. And so it may not be so much as well, I will say this came up when we were looking the last time at Title VII with respect to water meters. And that was a 12-month hold of a bond. That even though you passed inspection and it was installed, we were still holding on for 12 months. And so we had language changed 4 years ago that upon the completion of final inspection, the water department could release your bond once it was shown that everything was fine. And so I think we want to try to match some of that language that we see in other parts of the title. That if it turns out we need a standard for new construction and a substandard for repair replace, that makes a lot of sense. And I could see where even though it's not a problem now, I can foresee it being a problem. Because we heard it on the water meters. It's like, hey man, this work's been done. I'd like to get my money back, right? Well, you got to wait another 10 months. And there was no other mechanism in that language to release that money, even though everything was fine and had passed. So I think even though it's not an issue, I think it should blend better with the other parts of that same title. And really quickly, I think if we had two different types for new and repair replace, that might be the quickest way to do it.
Yeah, I agree with where you're going with this. But I'm trying to rectify in my own mind, if somebody is building a new home, a single family home here, they get an encroachment permit, they put this box culvert or whatever type of drainage apparatus in the bar ditch, so to speak, so to pull that, so that water can continue to flow. You've got a $3,000 bond or deposit that the village is holding, which while they're building, that shouldn't be an issue. However, if somebody puts a culvert or a box culvert in, drainage in, and puts it in the next day, and it's then completed and considered substantial completion, you don't even have time for foundation to be laid. Concrete trucks are driving over this thing. And so now all of a sudden, in the year and a half time frame, year and a half, you've got erosion issues because something has happened to this box culvert. If it were me doing it, I wouldn't put the box culvert in first. I would put some other temporary system in to handle that because of the weight of these trucks and everything else that you've got. So and the issue that I have is, how do you deal with that as one small aspect of the overall aspect of having drainage and looking at a topo where you've got drainage coming in to your street that may be creating issues while they're building. And I don't know whether this can all be encapsulated in paper form, but there's issues there. Also, if you don't mind me going forward, I know, Kurt, you've talked about doing these inspections and everything, but is that the best use of your time? Being the department head, and you've got water, sewer, you've got roads, all of these other things that fall under your purview, and yet you are putting on yourself to go out to add additional duties to do these other inspections and stuff. And so I question that, and that is a question to the leadership of the village to try to figure out, because I don't know. I don't know that it is. I don't know that it's not.
And I appreciate that. Part of it is, I feel that, that I have knowledge that can be beneficial to ensure that cause when I go out there, I'm, you know, to help people plan how their drainage is gonna work. I'm not just doing it to, add a burden to them. You know, our contractors, our homeowners, our new homeowners that are coming in, everybody, those are our constituents, okay? I look at being involved in the process of doing these inspections, of helping them do it right. And I'm trying in a real nice way to say, I don't know who else would do it. But there is one challenge that I have experienced in going out and having the inspection and the enforcement separated. You know, in the ideal world, our enforcement officer would be the one doing the inspections.
Okay,
So the challenge there is giving that inspector the knowledge. You know, it's pretty easy to train to go, you know, hey, this driveway over here is cutting water across the road, it's impacting the road, it's real easy for him to go see. Yes, it is. But if you ask the question, why is it doing it? If it's not blatantly obvious, he may not have the background or the understanding to understand it. But yes, I want to say that there's absolutely times where it's tough for me to go up and do it. So,
okay, let's take this a step further. You've gone out there, and I'm not trying to be critical, but I'm thinking through this stuff. You go out there, and I understand where you're coming from. You want to be helpful to people trying to move here and everything. But, I don't believe you have a PE after your name.
mhm.
So if you go out there or somebody else goes out there from the village to say, okay, this is what you guys, what you need, and it fails, whatever recommendation you made, size of culverts, the drainage, the way the on the topo of the property where it's feeding into this particular road or whatever that is, and it fails, who's responsible for that then? Is it back on the homeowner, even though it's the village that recommended that?
No, ultimately, the village is the one that ends up suffering for it. But going back to what I mentioned before about our reluctance on box culverts and not having that clear engineering, we have clear guidelines in the encroachment permit and everything that show how the inverted the culvert's supposed to be, how much cover it's supposed to have, this, that, and the other. That's all there. And if those recommendations are based on that, we have that as backup. My concern is, and for that exact reason, if we're making the call, yes, you need a box culvert. Well, what type? Well, this guy did a 14-inch, where that's probably fine. Really, the only thing that I have in here and that is the only thing that I tell people in regards to their design of their box culvert, it has to have at least the flow capacity of an 18-inch culvert. That's the only thing that I have in here that I can tell them.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay,
And if I can jump back to the previous topic about the inspections and the ongoing construction. When I took this job, what I experienced the very first spring, people starting projects, put their culvert in, lay their base course to the property line, say, okay, come do my final inspection. That doesn't happen. Final inspection comes after all the construction traffic has ended. So that's where I say, you know, going back to substantial completion. In my eyes, substantial completion is the second inspection. It's not final, it's substantial. Okay. But, and where that's important is if we're gonna stick to that 6-month hold in the deposit, we have to identify that point. Okay, some may say substantial completion is the third and final. I know when we do walkthrough with, let's say, the country club project, Country Club Drive, St. Andrews. The first spring I'm on the job, we go for substantial completion, inspection. So go up and basically everything is done. Anything major that sticks out, okay, so good, you got substantial completion. They were close enough, it wasn't long after that, let's do the final inspection, okay, and that's when we do punch list items. The well we just drilled in the back basin. Once the hole was drilled and there was casing in it and it was test pumped, that was the point that was considered substantial completion. And in terms of projects, substantial completion establishes what portion of the project the contractor can be paid on. Okay, and so even though these are two very different things, again, and it's a prime example. Like I said, I consider the second inspection to be substantial completion. The road and the structure, the driveway and everything is substantially complete, just short of the final finish on it. But that's something that needs to be discussed, because if it's in ordinance that we hold 6 months from the time of substantial completion, it needs to be clearly identified at what point is substantial completion. So anyway, I just didn't want to forget and go back on that, but as far as going to, we make the call and it ends up not working out. The first step that would have to be taken is if this driveway and this culvert placement is failing based on the recommendation, or if it's failing based on the driveway changing. You know, and we discussed this in our meeting a couple of weeks ago, that one of the biggest contributors to some of these driveways that are failing right now is lack of maintenance. There's a lot of driveways out there that when they were first built, even some of them for a few years, probably worked very well. You know, there is an element, and that I don't know how you know, we can suggest this to people, but have a program in place to maintain your driveway.
Do you have, when you make these recommendations, do you do it in writing? So that you can prove to them later on when they come and say, well, this is what you recommended and it's failed. So you're responsible, not me.
As far as where the culvert goes and how far it should be set back, and it's all it's in the encroachment permit packet. Everything that we tell people the culvert has to do, it's described in that packet. Yeah, I don't, outside of the right of way, I don't get into, as hard as it is for me not to, I don't get into, maybe you have a better drainage swell around your house, or maybe you need to get the water to shed this way on your property. I have to focus on just that part.
Okay, that kind of answers one of the questions that I have. Then you're only looking at what happens in the right of way and however wide that happens to be at that particular location.
And as tough as it is, you know, sometimes it's very easy to see contributing factors from up above, and it's very tempting. And it comes from not me wanting to bow up and act like some kind of expert. You know, I love dirt work that works well, and I struggle with, you know, a part of me wants to walk up and say, hey man, your dirt guy's really going to want to take care of this. You got both pitches of your roof coming to right here and everything's running right here, but I cannot do that. And I want to do it for good reasons. But it's also difficult, and you know, it isn't just uphill driveways where we have drainage issues. We get calls pretty regular. In fact, after every significant rainstorm, what can you do to come up and stop the water from running off the road and down my driveway? And that's a tough one. When you pull up and you see the issue is in their design of their house and how they did their drainage. And there's nothing I can do to stop the water from running from uphill. If the house was built below a cross culvert, it's hard, I can't just move the culvert, you know?
Yeah, well,
So it's a tough situation and you know, then the thing is, and I, especially now that we're seeing. More of the lots that are available are the ones that are tougher to build on. We're gonna see steeper driveways, because that's, a lot of those lots are what's available out there right now. And, you know, I am fully aware that I'm gonna reach a point where. I'm gonna have to say, I don't know what's gonna work here.
Sound
Does,
I know we've talked about the impact of new construction on the encroachment of the right of way, and whether or not the culverts out, or whatever it is, a culvert or box culvert that's going to last after the guys come in, pour concrete, bringing the materials for framing, and that's things of the like. We'll point out we've had a lengthy conversation as well with people who aren't building; they're just clearing the lot, right? Because you're entitled to get your property ready for development, to thin it, and that normally doesn't require a small truck. There's substantial vehicles involved, especially on some of these larger parcels. And so trying to get an encroachment permit and you may know this, you know, for a long time, everybody felt, well, I don't need a culvert, so I don't need an encroachment permit. And so there's also that element of trying to educate the public. It's any encroachment, not just if you need a culvert. And so there's some catch up that I think the village needs to do to just make the right of way more sustainable long term. And that it's not limited to just the new construction or the maintenance, failure of maintenance of a culvert that was put in. You know, legally, people have the right to get their property ready for development. And that may still be 2 years down the road, but they're here for this summer and they want to thin it out, and they can get a contractor to come in, and those aren't small trucks that do that either. But at the same time, we don't want them just running across the bar ditch just to get in and out. Um, or they have something that's works for the, you know, first 2 days and then it just collapses and fails. So we're trying to capture all of those activities to try to capture it more concisely in this title. And maybe we just break it up, right? You know, we mentioned just a bit about repair, replace, new construction. Maybe we have a section for lot thinning and property prep, development prep. But ultimately, we're seeing, and it also sounds to me that maybe we should flesh out the maintenance language for a culvert once it's installed and the responsibilities of a homeowner. You know, because we have similar language on sidewalks, although they're not all over the village, but you know, the code today says the sidewalk's the responsibility of the adjacent property owner, right? And we can look to see how we mirror that language on these encroachments, because ultimately I think everybody wants the overall system to work. That, hey, I've got a vacant lot and my property is not draining and negatively impacting the road or my neighbors, or I'm building on my property and I don't want to negatively impact the road or my neighbors. How do we make sure all of this lines up correctly or better than where we are today? And this again is not an unusual exercise overall. I think a lot of places are looking, hey, we haven't touched this code in 5, 10, 12 years. Yeah, maybe we should do what we're doing now, is take a look at it and see what practices work and what really don't. And you know, Randy, you just mentioned, what is it about maybe our policies, procedures that we could supplement with some of the code language that we're talking about? That makes a lot of sense too. But ultimately, I think what I'm hearing everybody discuss is that trying to get a better handle on how we make sure the right of way isn't going to be destroyed or negatively damaged down the road once this construction starts or is completed. How do we capture all of that is I think a better approach of what everyone's discussing today. And it doesn't, and I don't think this has happened with this group. It's not like, how do we solve it right now? I mean, there's a reason why everybody's still meeting. I will say that I felt giving the council an update, if it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I can't remember, Kurt. But I thought there were some ideas that council members mentioned as well, and some of it, like from personal experience. I mean, you got a council member whose drive approach is 60 feet wide and was told you should probably put a box culvert in. It's like, it's 60 feet wide because it fans out because my property is on a slope that, what do we, it's not a cookie cutter standard that we should try to put on every property owner. But nonetheless, I think ultimately, if we can at least make sure we capture all the ideas that we want in these amendments, that's a critical element to do. So what I've heard in the discussion is we've definitely talked about how to enhance the new construction, whether it's the inspections and the release of the bonds. I've heard maybe we should maybe break out. Originally, I heard we're just new construction and repair, remodel, and what I'm thinking now is maybe there should be a third tier of just site prep, right? These are all the elements. Yeah, these are all the elements that I think we really want to get fleshed out, so that we try to get all the puzzle pieces to line up correctly. And so I'm taking notes here. I know the last meeting we had, Kurt, we talked about defining substantial completion. We talked about the language of the bonding requirements, contractor, homeowner. We talked about the permits and where it can be picked up, because Kurt's right. I mean, there's conflict in the language. It says, I mean, it's not just in the permit. I mean, even in the violation sections, like, and if the village clerk notices, like, well, what's the village clerk going to be? Why does the village clerk need to be roaming the streets, right? So how do we get all that language to a 2025 level that just makes it more manageable and functional? And so I don't want to, if where we are right now is a lot more discussion on the actual encroachment and the culverts, that's fine. Because I think that's important to make sure we capture as many elements we need to. But I know that you've had other conversations. I know you've talked about the provisions of third-party water meter installations. You've talked about when the village is going to clean sidewalks during significant snowstorms. You've touched all these other parts of it, and that's great. That's really important to make sure we're looking at all the sections that we feel need to be touched. So that's all I wanted to add.
If I can be so bold as to suggest possibly doing flow chart this,
Okay.
and it might help to determine and simplify the direction that you need to go. And then you can add those elements. And if you have this, then you need this. If you don't have that, then you need to go this other direction, kind of thing. To flow chart that, to simplify and to go, oh, well, maybe this is simpler than we think, but maybe it's not.
And have that criteria established by somebody.
Yeah, then once you define those elements through that flow chart, then you can come up with a criteria, and hopefully it's simplified enough to where the simplest of contractors or homeowners out there can understand it and be able to comply with it.
Yeah,
I think that makes a lot of sense. My suggestion is I just want to be clear. Oh, so we're talking a flow chart on the permitting process for an encroachment, or is that what I'm hearing?
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And you can take each one of these elements, these box culverts or drainage apparatus or whatever that is, and take that and flow chart that so to determine the needs of what you have to have, whether that's even, and you may determine that there are some elements of this building program or the roads and infrastructure that are determined that somebody may need to do, and I don't know what that is, but there may not be any permitting process, or may be no compliance, or there is a simplified compliance, or a whatever. So that flow chart, you see what I'm saying? I don't know that you could put it, all of this Title VII under a single flow chart to make it work. But I think the only way that you're going to be able to determine a path for this box culvert, because that's what we're looking at, these drainage apparatuses, is to somehow or other define each element of that, so that then you can either break it out or say it's just an element and no other explanation is needed. Am I kind of?
No, I'm hearing that was, I think is going to be helpful in making sure that the actual title captures everything we need to do, right? So if we see a flow, in my mind, I'm thinking we prepare a flow chart on this whole process from permit, issuance, inspections, release of bond, right? And we take that process and then we look at the text, right? And we see where the text lines up, where there's some ambiguity, where it's just completely off, or there is no text, right?
Yeah,
I think that's an appropriate exercise that I can work on doing that. But in addition, ultimately, I think trying to get back to you guys a marked up version of where your conversations are right now. So at your first meeting, you guys were talking about, hey, maybe we do, you spent some time talking about the requirement of a bond, a performance bond type of thing, right? Okay, well, let's make sure that that's actually been shown here, right? And give you an overall comprehensive of where the notes are as of today, so that we're looking at the flow chart on encroachment permits, but we're looking at the overall context of what was mentioned needs to be touched, right?
yes. I think you're gonna have to do a couple of things. Once you determine that a bond, say, is an element of this flow chart, then you're going to have to, a simple thing to do would be not to add it to that flow chart, but to say, reference this particular section of chapter 7, and then go in and make those changes in that particular section of this Title VII, to make it direct and simplified, and yet somewhat comprehensive if you need to break that out and have more verbiage. But at least when you give somebody, you say, oh, you need a permit, this is what you need to do, they can, well, I think most people can follow flow charts, and they don't have to read the entire chapter 7 in order to understand the process. Because you've already got it laid out that it's a permitting process, and they're step by step as to what they have to do.
I like that idea that we can match the flow chart with actual code references. But I'll also say I've seen in other cities where they have flow charts, and it's on a building permit process of when you get your permit, when when are you ready to call for your foundation inspection, and then if you pass, that leads, for your rough
Right.
utilities,
Right.
and in some instances, those cities will put that flow chart just on the back of their approved permit, right? So the contractor knows, okay, so I got this green tag. When do I need to do when am I available to make the next call for inspections, right? And so I think that we could use it as a tool if we need to, on the permit side, when engaging with the public, so that they've got an idea of just, well, what is the timeline for this, right? How
Sure.
soon can I see second inspection for substantial completion? When am I ready to call for final, right? I think that could also be a helpful tool if we design it right, that we could include that on the back of an approved permit for them to have in the field, just as a reference.
I mean, it's a suggestion, for a path forward. And I'm just trying to figure out a way to lessen the burden of somebody having to read through Title VII, Title IX, whatever. And trying to figure out, all they want is a damn permit. To do an encroachment permit, so they can put in something so that they can work.
All the information.
You forgot.
In a 10-page packet that lists all the resolutions, all the ordinances, everything to refer to. It's just not in a formal flow chart.
You know, you forgot, Randy, that everybody wants a permit yesterday. That's the key word.
Of course, I understand
I mean,
that.
I'll ask the question with Santos, with you being in P and Z for so long and Randy, you being involved with AFPO, y'all see a lot of sets of plans for the houses. You review the plans to give them approval at AFPO. Now, we don't issue a permit until they have their approval from AFPO. In your experience, what do you consider the detail to be on erosion control and drainage in the plan sets that you look at?
AFPO has.
I know, but you see
No
the
dog
plan
in
set,
that hunt.
but have you seen how many sets of plans, building plans here that have a detail? And where I'm leading to with this is you mentioned in telling these people what's required for a driveway entrance. And no, I do not have a PE at the end of my name. Okay, let's say it's the scenario, okay, we're gonna get somebody with a PE behind their name. And they're gonna design this section from the edge of road profile to property line. What's the first thing they're gonna ask for? What are the plans for the house? And do they have a drainage and erosion control
Well,
plan?
they're gonna wanna know the specs that the village is requesting.
Yeah, but they're also gonna wanna know what the effect is in this portion from offsite, from the
Sure.
building point. The point I'm getting at is we don't require people to submit an erosion control plan or a drainage plan. Am I correct, Santos, that there's plans submitted that don't have any of that in consideration?
No, you're absolutely right. We ask for site plan. We don't ask for erosion control. And I think that goes to the way we started this conversation, right? Does Title IX require that? Is it just a Title VII? And if it's in one, not the other, maybe it should be in both, right? I think it's just as easy for P and Z if Title IX was amended to mirror Title VII, we could ask for an erosion control plan, and that be part of that site plan submittal, and it could be the same plan. I mean, you could see it on the site plan, right? But right now, those don't line up.
The P and Z, the plans that P and Z gets for the village are the same plans that come before the Architectural Review Committee. Sometimes we will get, a lot of times on the site plan, we will get topo lines. And we will question whether this is the smartest way for them to go, but we don't make recommendations as to, no, you can't do this, yes, you can, kind of thing. Because nobody on that committee has a PE after their name either. And besides that, the PE, unless they're engaged to do that study or whatever, they're not going to make an opinion on it anyway. Because of the liability that is behind that. But somehow, yeah.
But most of the site plans that are submitted, yeah, they show topo lines existing.
Yeah,
Very few of them have the topo lines drawn. I mean, I can go to the truck and get you the topo plans for workforce housing. There's the existing topo lines and then there's what I gotta build to. Okay, you don't see that on any house plans. And I'm not sitting here saying I'm against PEs and I know better this, that, and the other. But I also, to give an example, was contacted today about somebody that's gonna develop on the lot next to workforce housing. And they said, well, what are you guys gonna do to take care of our drainage? Okay. But also drainage was considered off of that lot for if anybody ever built on it. So long story short, what an engineer should always do in regards to drainage, if he's working on this small portion, he has to take into consideration everything above it. Okay? And I will say that there have been,
And below.
I'm not involved in reviewing plans or anything for new construction. The two sets of commercial drawings that I was made privy to. And I know I'm just a dumb ditch digger, I ain't got no PE, but it was very easy for me to see flaws in it. A 36-inch culvert that's 50 yards downstream of two 48-inch culverts. I'm not an engineer, but I wouldn't design that,
That's not
okay?
gonna- I
Anyway,
agree with you. That's not ever gonna work. Did you point it out to the engineer?
yes,
Did they change it?
no,
Why?
it's been approved.
By who?
Village of Angel Fire, they got their building permits, everything.
That's,
See, we got flaws in our process.
no,
Yeah,
that's just, all
That-
that's
that-
going to do is create problems later on
yeah.
and cost the
Here's-
village money.
here's the
which
thing,
is
that-
my
that-
money.
The culvert that they put in is not in the village right away. So I've got no jurisdiction over that. The second set of plans, their storm drain plan that does discharge, and they're planning to connect to a village storm drain. I did tell them their storm drain wouldn't be sufficient because it just accounted for the footprint of the property and they hadn't looked into the huge drainage basin up above. Anyway, long story short, you know, I do want to be, while I still have it fresh on my mind, because we have had a little bit of discussion about it, and before I lose it from my mind, about the ownership of culverts and the maintenance of culverts. I wanted to let y'all know that we, you know, it's another topic that we got into and discussed a couple of weeks ago. We were wanting to talk about all of Title VII. The majority of the conversation was culverts, encroachment permits. Okay. And even as recent as it was Fridays where we had the work session.
Friday.
Yeah, there was a discussion about, you know, it gets to the point where, you know, I get the feeling that the only way this issue will get resolved is if we go clean the culvert out. And I'll gladly publicly admit, we have cleaned out some people's culverts. We had to just save that road. But it brought up the discussion, what if the village simply did take on the maintenance of keeping these culverts clean? Okay. You know, and it made me realize that in reading through this and trying to imagine in my mind what led to getting us to some of these points, and I even felt myself doing it at times, you know, being out frustrated by seeing what people were doing, not following the rules. Let's change Title VII to punish these people. You know, it wasn't my intention, but when I really looked at it, man, I could see how somebody could be getting that perception. You know, and the thing is, there's a lot of people out there doing it right. And when we end up making things unclear or real stringent, then everybody suffers for it. But, you know, to compare the reference, Santos mentioned about cleaning the sidewalks, and it is in the ordinance. The owners of the adjacent property are to keep the sidewalks clean. It doesn't work where there's property, but nobody's on it. So the sidewalk doesn't get clean. Okay. I was working for the resort when that all came to a head and it was brought up, hey, that, you know, it's up to every property owner. And I, working for the resort, ended up clearing all the sidewalks just to get it done because it was the right thing to do. And at the time, Village of Angel Fire didn't even have a maintenance department. Okay, we do now, and that's one of their tasks. Even though it says in ordinance that the individual homeowners are to clean that sidewalk, we go out and do it because it's the right thing to do. And of course, you know, Brett asked me, well, what would it take for the village to start cleaning these culverts? Yeah, it would be an undertaking. We're probably I know we're better equipped to do it than anybody in town. There's no contractors out here that are equipped to clean culverts for people. Who do people call? So Brett asked, what can the village take over cleaning these culverts? And I'm not gonna say no to something just because it's hard and it's gonna be a change in the way we do things. Anything's possible. Here's what it takes. We need the equipment, we need the people. But, you know, we also need to ask ourselves, you know, yes, it's probably the right thing to do. Okay? Um, but is it a price that all constituents are willing to pay, if you will? You know, somebody that is capable of keeping their culvert clean, or somebody that is installed properly. Is it fair to say, well, the village is spending all this time cleaning out culverts? Why aren't they doing this? But I did want y'all to know that it was mentioned, and I am open to it. But it's not something that I would say, okay, let's just add it on top of what we've got right now. Because, you know, plain and simple, it's the right thing to do, and in my eyes, and to put it a better way, it's the only way some of these culverts are gonna get cleaned out, is if we do them.
Are you waiting for me to respond?
No. I wanted y'all to know that, you know, the conversations that we've had here, I take it to another level. And I want it to be made clear that everything I want to do with this isn't just to make my life easier. It's to do things right, what's best for the community. And the thing is, I want all of our contractors to be successful. I want all of our homeowners to have a great driveway. I don't want this to turn into everything focused around, okay, how are we gonna punish these people? You know, we have to admit to ourselves, we got some work to do on our end in our processes, and what opportunities we might be able to provide to do the right thing. And a lot of what I'm saying is just my opinion. And I know, going back to what you said about me doing inspections on encroachments, if it's a good use of my time, those are the kind of things, well, if you can't make the time to do encroachment permits, you're gonna have a hard time cleaning out culverts too and managing all that.
Well, the thing that I'm suggesting to you also is the fact that at some point in time, you're not gonna be here anymore.
Mhm.
You'll retire and go on to greener pastures, and then where's the village? They have no one that has been trained to move up to be able to do that. So there's no continuity. And I think it's incumbent upon you as the director of the department to ensure that there's continuity moving forward.
And really, the only opportunity I have to do this, and I've been fortunate and cursed to have managed people since I was 22 years old. And I learned early on, you know, always have to be training your replacement. I've got to say that it's been more of a challenge in this position than I've encountered before.
I'm sure,
Um,
because of turnover of personnel, I'm sure is part of it.
and also, and I'm sure Mayor Pro Tem Howell, he's served his community for so many years. He has experienced how focus and direction changes from administration to administration. You know, and that is one of there's so much of this is we want this to be created and get in place to where it's something that's going to be followed for years to come. Because, you know, I can go on and on about the stories that I've walked into, but I'll tell you a recent experience. We had one address that we could not find an encroachment permit for. Okay, the encroachment permit, we did finally find it. It was issued a year before I started the job. And only the $100 application fee was charged. The deposit was waived. The driveway was roughed in from an uphill road or uphill lot. No culvert was installed. And it's been that way ever since. But they say, hey, we've got an encroachment permit. And look, it says your guy came out and inspected. He came out for the first inspection and it was one of the streets guys. You will know that you know, as Public Works Director, I have leadership in solid waste. I have leadership in water and sewer department. I have leadership in maintenance. I don't have a person in streets. That position has been posted for a year and a half. And have not had an application. I stay involved and engaged in all of the departments, but there are certain duties in regards to streets. The inspections being one of them that I have to do because I don't have leadership in that department. And I'm not gonna hire somebody just to fill the position. So. Any questions?
I would just say that as a homeowner, I would be willing to pay the village to clean my culvert if it was damaging the roads. I don't know who to go to, and like you said, there aren't contractors with
Sure.
the, whatever they need to do it,
And we had that discussion and. You know, we think it's just as simple as establishing rates in resolution, not an ordinance. And offering it as a service. I will say that, you know, the streets department it's a machine, the brand of it is called a portamole. And it has a drilling mechanism and then it has a high pressure water pump. And it has the ability to basically drill through the sediment in the culvert and then a head that sprays water out and you pull it back and it washes it out. It's what the guys use to clean the culverts. When they first purchased that, I was told that by one of the guys in the streets department that's been here many years. The intention was, and I haven't been able to find a resolution on it or anything, but the intention was to justify buying this piece of equipment. Say it's gonna pay for itself, because here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna offer every citizen one free cleaning. And then there was a rate established for every time after that. You know, it's really not a bad idea, you know, to help supplement it. I don't think cost is as big of an issue as availability of labor. You know, and that's always the challenge, getting enough people. And we have, streets department has 6 guys. 3 of them are motor grader operators, and that's what we got to 128 miles of road. They've been doing a really good job. I'm really proud of the guys. But it does get to a point where, you know, to make certain moves and dare I say that the challenge of getting more people is probably greater than getting more dollars committed to it. It's easier to justify the dollars because it's pretty easy to establish, hey, we do this. It could, in theory, save us this much on road work at a time. That's not a problem. It is getting the people. That's where all the components that we're working on, the workforce, everything comes into play. There's so much that we could do with more people managed right. And the other thing that we really need, we have to be consistent, because even though some of the processes were established and you read it in Title VII and say, okay, this is how it's gonna happen. When you get to a point where people start making exceptions, well, a culvert's not going in, so you don't need that deposit, okay? You know, you're a friend of mine, so you don't need the deposit. I know you've been doing this for 40 years, and I trust you. We get ourselves in a real bind that way. You know, and I, you know, came into this job under the same impression that encroachment permits, you know, if you don't have a culvert, you know, what's the problem? But it took me one summer to realize that the most violations and the most short-term damage done to roads happened on building sites on the downhill side of the road. People dumping their material on the roads because the road is too steep to get down there. Their driveway is too steep, so vehicles parked up, can't do snow removal because there's lumber dumped on the road. Had more problems with new builds on the downhill side of the road than uphill. By far. I'm kind of to the point I'm kind of rambling on right now, folks. You don't have any questions for me?
So the purpose of this committee was to generate the discussions that we generated here and to try to look for all the unintended consequences that we'll have I'm a flow chart person myself. I think that's a great, I'm a visual person. And to do exactly what we've talked about here, in my mind, is the way to proceed. I think we've reached the point now where we need to ask Santos to start pulling all this together into a draft. So he can bring it back to village council and we can all start talking about it from the point of something that's concrete to look at. And that's where I propose that we go at this point.
I'm sure.
I'm good with that.
So I really appreciate you two, because without you, we'd be where we were 9 months ago, believe it or not. Any other
I can-
comments? Yes,
I can get started on that. I think putting it not just a flow chart together, but all the comments you've mentioned so far in your other meetings where you've talked about, you know, the insurance bond and all those other things, trying to create an overall draft update. I can start working on both.
yeah. So I've given Santos copies of everything we've talked about and all the points that have been referenced, so. I'm glad he's taken on this job.
Yeah, too, I'm not gonna lie, I got to a lot of points on this stuff where I'm just like, I don't know what to do.
Yes, so
Uh,
I find out the more good conversations we have, the more we finally reach that point we're looking for.
Yeah,
And I think we're well on that road, but there's a lot more to be done. So,
And it takes tough discussions to get results. I mean, if we just try to make sure everybody's happy, we gotta have the tough discussions.
so I'll let you know when this comes before council. If you'd like to attend and comment, that would be appreciated. And we'll get the public involved, we'll get the contractors involved, and finally come up with a plan. So if there's nothing else, let's adjourn this meeting.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you offline. Sure. I think we're still. Yeah, we're still recording, so
I
I'll
don't,
wait.
and I don't know how to shut the recording on.